الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وآله الطيبين الطاهرين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته Ramadan Mubarak and Ramadan Kareem. So this month is associated with devotions, and as have been repeating over and over again, devotion is the alignment of the inner being with God, the principle of completion and perfection. And this alignment is by way of preferring God over ourselves and wholesome surrender to God. And the end result that is anticipated is not reaching God in any way. The end goal that is expected is the prevalence of the beauty of the divine. And that can only happen by the fading away of the individual and the relenting of the individual slowly and gradually. Now, in this process, there is a necessary feature that accompanies us throughout our lives that assists this process of getting to God. And that feature are the constant trials of life. Now we find the Quran saying that, do you feel you will enter into paradise without God testing you? So obviously we see this immediately, that we have to be tested in order to get into paradise. But it is actually loftier than paradise. The Quran had to phrase it in those terms because the audience which the Quran was addressing were not ripened enough in their minds to understand the meeting with God, even though the Quran constantly talks about they forgot our meeting, the meeting with God, or the verses recited through the mouth of the Prophet. So therefore, he who is desirous of the last day and meeting with God, then let them perform righteous deeds. So paradise is placed in the place of meeting with God. So the verse says, do you feel that you will attain paradise without being tested? It's an impossibility. Tests make you eligible for the meeting with God and for the hereafter. So here we ask a fundamental question, that if this life is one filled with tests, and if tests are supposed to take us to paradise and for the meeting of God, then what do the tests do for us? Now you can say, well, we can endure tests with patience, perseverance, gratitude, and we become eligible for a reward. I will say, yes, indeed. This is also something that the Quran is saying. But what do the tests do in the process of bringing about a response of gratitude and a response of patience and perseverance from us? The essential thing that these tests do is that they change us from within. They make us bigger than the tests themselves. And if we can analyze this carefully, a test is only a test if it does not sit well with us at a psychological level. What that says is that we are beholden to a certain situation that is now being challenged, and hence we are feeling uncomfortable. And as soon as we become comfortable with it, we have grown beyond it. So this is what the tests are doing in essence. They are breaking away our our limits, our attachment to the body and the bodily, and our attachment to this worldly domain. And they are freeing us from this attachment and making us into more expansed creatures. And that expansion in itself is an expression of the reception of God. Now imagine, if our understanding of life, directedness towards God, and test would be more accurate. Now you're looking at somebody like Imam Hussein, who turns to God at the peak of his tribulations, and he says, you place the best tests. Now which realm was he in? He was seeing the productive effects of totally being absolved and cut away from his own personal identity that makes him Hussein ibn Ali, who is other than the one who is filled with God fully. So he is thanking God for those tests that are tearing away his identity by taking away his beloved Akbar and Abbas, by imposing this psychological trauma upon him that your family is going to suffer captivity after you go. And as he lets go of these worries and concerns slowly and gradually, he emerges into godliness. And that is why he says, I thank you for the best trials that you place before me, and I am pleased with your decree. So the attitude towards tests is very important for us to grow through them. So the first thing we need to realize is that this is not our abode, this world. It's a transient place. We have come here for a momentary stay. We are not going to stay here for long. Now, the amazing thing is, we know we are here today, but we can't guarantee that we will be here by tomorrow. So that should be at the forefront of our minds, that this is a temporary place of stay. That's the first thing. Two, we do not know when our time here will end. And then we've got to understand tests. The tests are therefore opportunities faced in this world, which then will make what we become in our onward journey. So therefore, the attitude towards tests is then bettered and reformed, that these tests are good for us. Now, one more thing we need to make clear here is that the Quran says, you have been given but a little knowledge. We don't know what this world is all about and what we are all about most accurately. But we can hypothesize, we can think, and we can say, well, God is a wise God, needless God, a God that is all kind and all loving. Why do we say this? Because that is what we feel we ought to be from within. And if this state is within us, then it can only be a state that's inspired by God. Otherwise, it would mean that God is deficient and we are better than God. So God is wise, He is kind, He is needless. This is what we define God as from deep within ourselves. So a wise, kind, needless God does not take any pleasure in testing His creatures. What that means, therefore, is that either we deserve these tests because we have done things at some point, or either we have chosen these tests as a means for us to claim a much greater status of existence. Now, if you put all of this together, that this life is a momentary phase, it will end very abruptly in many cases, and we don't know when. And the journey is one going to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the tests are a means towards that. That tests become productive and meaningful. So you see, now when the tests come upon us, it is an opportunity for us to introspect deep within ourselves. We will spontaneously react and interact with that test. We will feel maybe a sense of despair, a sense of hopelessness, anger, rage, offense. This is then an opportunity for us to look deep within ourselves and say, what was this test meant to evoke within me that I can now see, analyze, and see that that is my deficiency from within, and I need to overcome it. So, for example, somebody went and he abused one of the imams, and the imam was very calm. And once that person tired himself from abusing the imam said, it seems that you are very agitated. Have you embarked on a long journey and then come here? He said, indeed. He said, come, let me host you. That man fully changed. But that wasn't the point. The point was that the Imam wasn't perturbed by it. He wasn't offended. Somebody swears at me and criticizes me and curses me. I would be enraged. I would be involved in that thought. I would be offended to no end. Every thought of mine would be preoccupied by that. I would not even sleep at night. It would take days before the impression created by that state upon my soul fades away. What does that say to me about myself? That had his words been meaningless, I would not have interacted so bitterly with them. So it means that the words were meaningful, and I need acknowledgement. I need validation. And I'm not getting that. I feel I'm worthy of far more. And look at him, how he disrespects me. So then that becomes an invitation for me that, look, that was a test placed there to reveal to you your own inner inadequacy so you can work through it. How do we work through it? Say, well, you know I'm inadequate. Why should I have this false pride? Allow me to fade away. Let people swear and curse at me, O Lord. I know I'm far worse than what they are saying in any case. I'm totally unworthy and worthless. That's an invitation. If a test comes in the way of loss of capital, then we worry. But we are supposed to think to ourselves that God says in his speech, O son of Adam, I do not ask you for tomorrow's devotion today. Do not ask me for tomorrow's sustenance today. If I keep you alive tomorrow, I will give you your sustenance. And if I decide not to, then nobody else can give it to you. Why worry? So I need to remind myself at that point that I'm insecure. And then there is an invitation for me to turn to my God and to say to my God, oh God, if you sustain me, then no one can snatch the morsel from my mouth. And Allah, if you restrain a breath of air from coming to me, then no one can bring it to my mouth and into my lungs and free myself of this insecurity. Similarly, we are tested with people around us, sometimes difficult people. Now, here, as opposed to those habitual responses that we give to situations that, why am I in this trapped situation? Why do I have to face this? And becoming depressed and despair. We should ask a question. Why would I have chosen this person to come into my life? Why would I have chosen to interact with these people around me? What was the deeper reason? What were they supposed to evoke within me? What was I supposed to learn about myself? Now imagine if somebody has that clarity that this world is not really real. I'm here for a moment. I have a task to perform. The task is to free the inner captive, which is my personal identity and the way I'm interacting and reacting. All of these things are opportunities. Then our responses will be very different. And as we respond calmly from within, it affects the people around us. You see, sometimes in my earlier days, and I'm sure it's the same thing today as well with me because I don't think I've grown at all, I would force myself to offer befitting responses to difficult situations, but my inner being was still agitated. And because the inner state was agitated, that inner state would psychologically reflect itself to the mind of the other, even though my outer demeanor was calm. But after many years of continuously doing it, the inner state also becomes calm. And then you see that difficult situation, that difficult person who brought their test, we learn from it, and our calmness actually rectifies the situation outside of ourselves. So instead of then collapsing under tests, becoming desperate, when we are faced with certain situation, becoming hopeless, complaining, breaking down in difficult relationships, we will begin to grow through them all. It will no longer be the case, you did this, that's why I did this. It will be the case, you did this, and I thank you for it revealed to me myself, as opposed to me saying, I did a wrong to you as well, and this is a justification. No, the attitude will change drastically. So tests are an opportunity to align with God and to grow towards God by taking note of our inner deficiencies and detaching ourselves from the bodily being and growing. Now, on that note, of course, this is the month of the Quran, and we need to read the Quran excessively. There is no instructor better than the Quran. And the Quran teaches each one of us at our own pace, challenges us, takes us on a beautiful journey, and reveals its wonders gradually as it makes us eligible. But it's a difficult journey, and not an easy journey. Bear that in mind. But hold on to God and take that journey. So in the Quran, we find that the fresh Muslim community with the Prophet, they went to Badr, although it was not their intention to go to Badr, but they were led in that direction. And they faced it, they were outnumbered. They faced a big army and victory was theirs. Now they had become complacent, that since we are Muslims and Allah is on our side, we can never lose. It was a pagan sentiment that we worship this God as opposed to that God, and this God is mightier than that God. So this God will always secure for us our worldly benefits, the worldly benefits in the sense that we will be the triumphant and we will receive the spoils of war and we will have the name. They went to Uhud and they lost. Now, the Quran says God has yet to see who is a believer amongst you as opposed to he who is not. That defeat was there for them to see within their inner being where they stood. Now, a lot of them ran away. The Quran says they ran away. Some of them ran to Abu Sufyan, who headed the Meccan forces, and they said, look, take us back into the folds of your religion and spare us our lives. In any case, the Prophet hadn't died. The Quran said, what if the Prophet had died? Does that mean you turn away from the truth? Now that caused them to introspect so deeply within their souls that it actually made them into true Muslims, surrender to God. Because they saw that no, their faith in God was for all the wrong reasons, the bodily reasons, that we will be with God, Allah, He will secure our dunya, and He will give us paradise. What they didn't understand was that being with God means giving oneself over to God and being pleased with His decree, because God is not after the bodily gains, nor after giving us paradise. God is after cleansing the inner being so that finally He can call out to the choicest of His creatures and say to them, O contented soul, return to your Lord. Can you imagine how blessed that soul must be, to whom God says, return to your Lord, being pleased with your God. Imagine, and God being pleased with you, you being pleased with your God. For God gave you all these tests, cleansed you from yourself, and revealed your true beauty to you, and you're pleased with God's trials and His decree. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this month a very profitable and a blessed month for us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring relief to the oppressed people of Palestine, and may Allah bring to justice the aggressors and their oppressors, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the good sense to embrace our human family and to live in a state where Allah allows us to serve them all, one and all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.